Hey, what's up, guys? So I just started. I just started the book Traction. I only done the first two chapters, but I can already tell that it's going to be a really good book because what I like about it is that it really breaks down business and like scaling and running the business in about as simple as plan that you possibly can. It's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and the six keys or the six parts of that are issues, traction, process, data, vision, and people. And it gets a little bit. The first chapter is kind of just like basically just talks about that as an overview, and it also gives you it also gives you a test to like a scale of 1 through 5 on different categories to see like where you're how strong your each trait or each part of your business is. So of a little more detail on those components of traction, of people, of leadership, process, and all that. I decided I don't have a business, so I decided to do the what I hope to, what I aspire to, which is be for president of U of L. And what reading this book has helped me do is kind of help me be a little bit more level-headed. So even though I got a lot of good ideas and that's all great, what the key always is though is execution. Because you can have all the best ideas, but if you can't properly execute them, it doesn't really matter. And to me, personally, I think that uh, I think overall in long term, I think more importantly, vision is more important. But of course, like I said, you have to be able to put in the work and know how to do the process. But those are more mechanical, much easier traits. You can't really create creativity or necessarily create inspiration in somebody else. It's I think it's a difficult thing to learn if you don't already have that. Whereas it's a lot easier for somebody to learn how to uh, how to understand or how to perfect a uh, processing system, for instance, so processing payments, doing refunds. How do you do grades, and putting in grades and stuff like that, and properly coming up with different systems or methodology of teaching people. Those I think those are much more tangible than you're inspiring somebody. If you don't already have that vision, it's kind of hard to put it into somebody that doesn't have it. Whereas if you have that, you can teach people accounting, you can teach people processes, you can teach people how this works, how that works, and that and the other works. But like I said, as far as vision, I think that's much less uh, a skill, if you will, that's really teachable if you don't already have it. But I decided to do the scoring for it, and this is it's the total, I believe. Well, five. Yeah, it's out of 100. And basically, if it was like 28 to 34, you need to read the book, and at about up to I think like 55% or maybe 60%, it was about average, and then the optimal level was around 80. If you're at 80, that means everything's running real smooth. So like I said, I did U of L. Of course, I don't know all the ins and outs, but I kind of guessed or gave a benefit of the doubt, so to speak, to things that I didn't know, and then base the rest of it off of my perceptions of what things that I've seen at the school and overall just how they operate. And I came up with a score of 48, which again is average, and to me that sounded about right. It's a pretty average school. There's nothing too special about it, too unique about it. It's pretty bland overall, or I guess it's comparatively with other schools. It's not uh, you know top notch or anything, but I don't think too many schools are in the first place. or I don't think they would get that in the first place. And then the second chapter gets into the leadership and the five keys of leadership, which is simplify. Uh, Basically, whatever processes that you're doing, or whatever your mission, like what having your establishing values, what basic mission statement, yeah, basically, like what your company represents or what you want it to represent, and then using that and then based off of those criteria, that's how you decide who you hire, who you fire, and what kind of moves that the business makes off of basically anytime you make a decision, does this project resemble our views? Are we meeting what our standard is? And then the next one is delegate and elevate. And this is very, very important for anybody that wants to grow their business. That once you figure out something, it's important that you know how to do everything in your business. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything, but that it does mean that you should know how to do everything. You shouldn't have somebody else doing something that you couldn't do yourself. Because, like I said, that's if you want your business to grow. For instance, let's say if you want to if you have a food franchise that you want to grow, you can't be spending all your time mopping up the floor and cleaning out the bathrooms and making everybody sandwiches. You need to teach somebody how to do that, and then have a process for develop a process for things that are repeated. And this goes into number 4 as well, which is systems. And you have to simplify it as much as possible, and then make it so that you can teach it to somebody else. And then when you have somebody, they have a protocol that they go through. So if this happens, they do this. If this happens, they do that. And then when they do that, if it's like this or if it's like that, then they do this or that, and so on and so forth. The next one is having long-term and short-term goals. So what that means is basically having the short term is quarterly, so your 90-day plans, and when you start getting to long term, or your short term should be broken down into weekly and perhaps bi-weekly goals, and then have that chunk up your year in 12 week increments, and then have a 1 year view of where you want to be in 1 year, where you want to be in 5 years, and where you want to be in 10 years. And now, of course, things do change. Technology changes, systems change, but so you may have to tweak those as time goes on. But once you can establish those, the short term and the long term goals, then you can be okay. We're gonna make, especially if you're making big decisions or even small ones like every day. Is this something that's helping us towards whatever that 1 year goal is? Is it helping us towards that 10-year goal? And if you have those set in place, then it's easier to kind of yes or no on projects, or how to make sure that you're getting the right one. Not because, like, for instance, having people speak. Well, let's say you want to have somebody speak at the business school. Okay, well, there's tons of people that run businesses. There's tons of people that have expertise in that. So how do you pick which persons? Well, then you have who's available. Again, you got a pretty big pool there. If you have those core values set, then you can be okay. So we have it simplified to this, and it's like between this person or that person, you can make the decision a lot easier by saying, okay, we want this person because they hit more of our core values or where our plans are than this other person. And it just really simplifies stuff if you want to grow. And it's also important with long-term and short-term goals, to have a leader that's a visionary. So you can kind of keep tabs, make sure you have a good leadership team so you can keep tabs on what's going on day to day, weekly, and monthly. However, you, like I said, you delegate to elevate. So you need to delegate all these tasks, these more mundane tasks that you outgrow, so that you can always keep the hindsight and um, make sure that you're going in the right direction, or if something needs to change, that you're on top of that. And one of the examples that they use that I like is going is if you're cutting a jungle, or cutting a road through a jungle, of having somebody go up on top of the trees so you can see what's coming up. So maybe there's a cliff and that's coming up, and so you need to start moving towards the left side, or you need to start turning towards the left so that you don't run this road into the cliff. Or maybe there's a mountain, and again, instead of having to get to the mountain and then you go all the way around a mountain, you can start moving towards that outside so that you don't have to use as much. You don't have to make a road as long, because all of a sudden this mountain just came up. And to me, that's why vision is so important. And then the systems, which I covered that, and then finally structure. Now, structure is, again, that goes toe and toe, hand in hand too, with systems. Of when if you're able to break down issues that you have, or any problems, or, like I said, tasks that are repeated over and over and over again, you're able to create a system. And you have to, another emphasis they put on was growing internally before externally. So before you want to expand, you need to make sure that everything is on point and on key before you, basically, by expanding out externally, all of a sudden you create a bigger problem because you had a small problem but internally, and then you tried to expand externally, and now that small problem just got bigger simply because you expanded and your team wasn't ready for it. And it talks about how it's important, or how this can take up to a year or two just to do this. But it's like, once you have that well-oiled machine, then that makes growth much easier, rather than trying to make those big steps and then you're constantly playing catch up, and it throws everything into total chaos. So what has that me thinking about as it relates to the school, which I have already thought about or planned on, but at the same time it makes the focus much more clear, much more pinpointed, that to before even thinking about all these big ideas, is that, okay, how can we take what we already have now and make sure that's as efficient as possible, and that all the teachers are the right teachers, all the chairs are the right chairs, and then all the people, again, athletic directors, coaches, so on and so forth. So basically, putting the whole system in review before I start adding on to it and trying to go with my bigger plans. Making sure that, again, we establish the core values, everybody knows what those are, and then we can begin to go down the list of making sure that, the history department, the groundskeeping, the food, this, that, and the other, all those things, everything is synced up. We have the right people in the right places. Everything is synced up to what our core values are, where we want to take things, and then we can just start growing and going and going and going real smooth. And a lot of the testimonies in this book talk about how a lot of the companies that, even if they've been in business for 5, 10, 20, I think there was one even that was, the guy was in business for like 35 years. And after reading this book and taking a year to reevaluate everything and make sure everything was running smooth, they saw a 50% increase in revenue. I think it was revenue. It may have been profit, but an increase in money, increase in revenue the business expanded 50% every year for 3 years. And there was also another one that grew. It was their first quarter, but still, compared to last year, they were up 150%. Which, even if that falls apart a lot, even if they're not able to maintain that, that's still pretty hard to fall completely from without having, a decent gain. Even if it goes down to 30 or 40%, that's still really good. You're That's still really good growth. So, again, I'm learning a lot of stuff and becoming much more level-headed so that I can, start to put my thoughts down on paper and come up with a more stringent plan, and how I can, like he talks about a 2-year business plan, which that's not that hard to do. So reading this book, I can break those down, and then I can develop my own 2-year plan, and then of course, by gaining more information and hopefully getting into that position, then I can start to refine that and then work with the leadership, with the chairs of each department, and make sure that we know what our values are, and that every day we're making those decisions in light of those. So I hope this is helpful, and also I want to probably be like next Saturday in the like late morning, early afternoon, something like that. I want to set up, do a live stream and go over the book. So hopefully most people that have the book, and then can finish it up by next Saturday, and then do my overall interpretations, and then hopefully can have enough people with questions and stuff like that, or that want to uh, have their own, what they thought, their own thoughts on the book, and have a lot more uh, comprehensive discussion, and hopefully get a lot more out of the book than simply just reading it. All right, peace.